Welcome to Soundbreaking. On today's episode, we're talking to Alexander Loveyko. I hope I pronounced that right.
You got it.
Who's an entertainment attorney and an IP, both together, which is really important these days. IP. If anybody doesn't know what IP is, intellectual properties, and that consists of working, especially now in the music tech business. We're going to talk a lot about that. Alex, thank you for joining us today. And for our listeners who might not be familiar with you, could you please give us a small introduction before we dive into it? I'm sure it's going to be extremely insightful and informative.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. My name is Alex, as mentioned. I'm an IP and entertainment attorney, New York licensed and Miami based. I've been in the space for about 12 years as an attorney. I'm originally a Russian, and I've had a chance to live in a couple of different places, but found myself in the sunny Miami and have stayed there for the past 6 years, working for my current law firm. We do a lot of good work. We're an entertainment, IP, media law firm. We have a lot of sports clients. We have a lot of TV and film clients. But I would say music is about 50% of the business, more or less. There's a lot of independent artists, a lot of publishers, labels, distributors that we do a lot of good work for. And then, look, I'd say with the advance of technology and Miami being a hub for a lot of kind of new technology, new developments, oftentimes I've had a hand in a lot of different tech startups as well as digital projects, web projects, and Web3 projects with different crypto executions that we help our clients with. So it's been a pleasurable ride, and I'm hopeful that it's going to continue in the same vein for me and my firm. So pleasure to be here with you.
Amazing. Thank you. Same here, my friend. Alex, as an attorney, you worked in New York and Miami, and both Miami and New York, they flow pretty multicultural, pretty international. And do you see a flow of a lot of the entrepreneurs who wants to be in the music business? Do you see more into the music tech business, more tech startups, tech tools that focuses, tech AI startups, I should say, that focuses on the music business itself, newer tools? Do you see more flux to that, or more still a lot of people just setting up their own record label, record company, production, and or management without the being part of that tech AI startup into the music business?
Well, I would say that both kind of verticals are pretty prevalent in my industry, right? That we have a lot of people who are just focusing on music, and there's plenty to be focusing on, right? If you are
Hmm.
trying to build a successful career, where you're trying to manage artists, or trying to bring artists up to a major label as an independent label via an upstream deal, there's plenty of different kind of things that you need to juggle without going into the tech space. But now I would also say that on the tech side of things, where I often do office hours, a mentor, and I've been a part of different startup accelerators, you see more and more entertainment related startups and entertainment related tech projects, whether it be a subscription services, whether it be something that helps artists, entertainers, and athletes monetize, their name, image, and likeness, which has been the rage of the past couple of years, since that has been allowed for a lot of the amateur athletes to not lose their eligibility. Um, and I would say some projects that we've seen across our table are very interesting. We've seen projects that are making musicians kind of works in their career more accessible to their fans, and that are helping people build apps that would, you know, monetize their following. We've also seen apps that help musicians in their kind of run of the mill things like signing split sheet agreements, right, and making sure that all of their proceeds are properly reflected. It's still, somewhat behind. The law is always behind the tech. It's just the nature of things. And the same thing here. There's a lot of things in music that can be updated and that do require a little bit of a facelift. And it's a pleasure to see some of the entrepreneurs who come from music with a musician background knowing those issues and knowing those gaps, trying to solve them. So
As an attorney, you come across a lot of beginners in the music business. Back in the day, 30 years ago, to get in the music business, it wasn't easy. So you start a corporation, this and that, but it's not just about that. It's about understanding the business, the fundamentals, the infrastructure, the distribution, the relationships that take years and years of establishing and knowing. Would you say the music business now, anybody could get into it? Is it much easier because it's more tech driven, less than relationship based, and knowledge of the old infrastructure that's been there for many years?
I would definitely say so. That yes, it has become much more accessible. I don't remember who said it, but it was, I think, a nice kind of point to bring up is that it's easier than ever to become a musician, but it's probably harder than ever to be a big one, right? A really, really prominent one. Just as a result of you having the resource to be your own marketing team, to be your own promotional campaign generator. If you're doing things properly, if you know the points to hit, if you know the audiences to target, if you are competent in TikTok, right? If you're competent in Instagram, and the different tools that are built around it to help you do your videos quicker and release it immediately and all those things. I've seen a lot of successes and a lot of clients who have never had a manager or never had a label, never had a publisher reach, the heights where we are negotiating 8-digit catalog sale deals for them. And that's all out of the bedroom. So that is definitely possible, but I would also say that my take on it is a little bit skewed because the people who can afford my services is usually the people who have made it to a certain extent. So it's harder for me to assess whether somebody who hasn't yet reached, let's say, 100,000 listeners on Spotify, which would usually be kind of that thresholds where distributors start looking at you more or less. I'm not sure how many of those folks are there who neither can kind of afford themselves a services of an attorney, and on the other hand, they wouldn't be attractive enough for me to bring any deals to their table either. But when it comes to that kind of mid-major, layer of musicians, I would say that I've definitely seen a lot of the folks who you would never know about making 7-digit, annual revenues.
Mhm. I mean, as they say, sometimes when it's easier to get into things, it's harder to make the money. I think the money became tighter and tighter. Now I think it's based on not just talent, it's how creative you are and how advanced and how ahead of the curve you are, in order to make money in the music business. It's no longer just based on brick and mortar. Back in the days, it's a bit different. Once you get your foot in the door, now you're easier to make money. But again, sure, you need the talent. But once you get that, how should I say, that entrance, it'll be easier. Now it's much harder. Even now, it's all digital, obviously, and whatever you make in stream, it's not even, you know, back in the day, one CD, one record, or one vinyl, you sell it. That's about a couple of few thousand streams at least, you know, and to make a couple of dollars.
Hmm. I agree.
So yes, it became much harder. What do you think? Well, first I want to ask you what really led you to this path, Alex, to the IP entertainment. What influenced you to say, you know what, this is what I like. That's where my passion lays, and that's the path I want to carve into.
I think it's a combination of things. Some of it is luck, right? I would say that a lot of my colleagues would like to be in the entertainment, right, as opposed to personal injury or bankruptcy
Yeah.
law. Just as a matter of the types of cases, types of clients you work with, just kind of keeps you young. I would also say that a portion of it was due to the fact that my family, originally, my father is the CEO of a content brand, a pretty successful animation project out in Russia that I had a pleasure of working for a little bit as a licensing attorney for the Masha and the Bear cartoon. But so that was kind of a little bit of intro into the licensing space generally and the content space and how simultaneously familial and joyful and then profitable it can be. Then on the other hand, I've always been a fan of NBA. I remember when I first went to Madrid for my master's, sports law master's. That was kind of my goal. I was like, oh, I want to be an NBA attorney. I want to work with basketball players. Until I came to the States and had a couple of visits to the offices of a couple of teams and realized that there's like 5 attorneys per team max, and all they do is real estate transactions. So there was a lot of kind of general connectivity for me in my career and my path with either sports or entertainment or licensing. And then when I became part of my current law firm, there was just some of those. It's a benefit of the fact that the firm is boutique. So I had a
Mhm.
chance and ability to pick the areas that I wanted to focus on, that I wanted to dive into, that I wanted to go to events to and kind of bring business from, which allowed me to kind of tailor it to what I think is fun and cool and interesting. And very, it's a very good feeling to be able to be part of somebody's story and a significant portion thereof, whenever they are making something, great like music. It's, no better feeling.
Interesting. Well, at least you have the love for music. I mean, you came in from licensing background for branding, and then you got involved in the entertainment law. Um, you also involved in crypto,
Okay.
and blockchain. Let's talk about that and how is it, it felt like that it was a bit of fad. It came in or fade. It came in where everybody jumped on it. Yeah, let's see, the contract, the music, everybody wants their, the music on the blockchain and all of that. And it kind of disappeared. In my opinion, I said no, it didn't. I think just the technology is not yet all there for everybody to have this kind of accessibility to it. And I think it's coming back once this whole technology come together, and it will. But what's your opinion? How important it is to be involved in it, or to kind of, whoever's being involved right now in the music tech business, to kind of set themselves ahead of themselves. Like, you know what? Here's what we need to do. We need to have this type of setup because this is next. That's what's coming, and that's how it's going to be part of our ecosystem in the music business.
Well, I'm hopeful that it will, right? I do think that, I've had a pleasure of joining a couple of different conferences as a speaker and attendee. This year I spoke at NFT NYC in New York on the topics of that, specifically royalties and kind of secondary income streams for artists and creators and musicians. And
Hmm.
the main issue with the existing technology is, as you mentioned, it's not there yet, right? So the moment you switch chains, the moment you switch platforms, the users who are purchasing your content or the content that you're reselling can choose whether to pay those secondary royalties or not to the original creator. So if whatever that's kind of left to the choice of the purchaser, that obviously kind of breaks the chain down oftentimes and more often than not. Now, if the technology is there to allow proper registration of those rights and proper tracking and proper monetization, then it's something that you definitely should explore and continue doing so because
Hmm.
in my personal take, the crypto, or I guess generally NFTs, crypto, however you want to go about it, there's a certain level of regulatory oversight when it comes to issuing tokens. Obviously, the Securities Exchange Commission is very much so interested in making sure that everything is done in accordance with its rules. But when it comes to NFTs, it's much less so stringent. But you still, the benefit of it all is that if we're talking about distributing your music, you gotta give it
Correct.
to DistroKid, CD Baby,
Yeah.
TuneCore, right? If you have a label, you're giving it a cut. If you have a publisher, you're giving it a cut. So whatever those means are, there's very few of those that allow you to obtain that direct monetization from your user base without somebody middlemaning the transaction. So that is the main kind of benefit of crypto and Web3 in the entertainment space for artists and independent artists who want to get additional revenue sources. But then on the other hand, I would say that until it is there in terms of technology and in terms of adoption as well, right? You don't want your users to have to go and download their MetaMasks and then, do Uniswap to get your, music token and then use it on your platform. Like you want to make the experience as attractive as possible. So a lot of the developmental projects that I oversee from the legal side of things, the Web3 startups, and we have a couple in the music space that we represent, there's always a balance between making it, Web3 focused as well as making it accessible to the users who might not be that familiar with the industry yet. So, and it will remain to be a balance until there's mass adoption and until the technology is easy enough for everybody to use and beneficial enough. You know.
So what you're saying is pretty much basically it's just something to have right now. If you
Yeah.
have the capability and the technical ability to be part of that, if you understand it and if you have access to it, kind of set yourself up with it. Just don't depend on it. Just be part of it. You're saying
Well, there is a benefit to being first in things, right? There's a
correct?
benefit
Yes.
in being the pioneer, and there's
Yes.
not necessarily too many people who are, the GJs, right? Who are that involved in Web3, who are on all of the Twitter spaces and Discord servers. So the idea is that there's a certain level of that group. Obviously, there's also, retail folks, so folks who have gotten into the space because of the bull run and whatnot. But generally speaking, if you're competent, if you're professional, if you provide value, and if you find yourself in those communities that are a little bit on the smaller side, when they grow, you're going to be the one who was there from the beginning. So same with
Correct.
artists, right? If you are a Web3 DJ, right, that does
Mhm.
all the Web3 events, if you are, doing music for projects and doing sync licensing for them, and that is they know you as that guy or girl, I think that is a very good way for you to establish your place in that space for when it does become much more profitable.
You mentioned something Web3 DJ. If our listeners or viewers on Soundbreaker, they're not familiar with that, can you please give us some light on it?
Well, so degens is what the loyal Web3 enthusiasts call themselves, just due to the fact that a lot of the transactions and financial decisions being made when it comes to Web3 have a certain element of recklessness to it, right? You wouldn't be buying a picture of an ape for $100,000, but yet here we are, and Bored Ape Yacht Club exists. So that is where the degen nomenclature comes from.
Interesting. Okay, good insights. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Where do you see the future of distribution? Self DIY, or it seems like in order for you to be it's like you lived in New York. Obviously,
mhm.
I'll give it the best example. In order to cross from New York to New Jersey, there's two ways. Either you take a helicopter, okay, or a ferry. It's just three ways, or the two tunnels and the bridge.
Mhm.
Holland, Lincoln, George Washington. So it seems like you want your music distributed. If you're a label, you gotta have to go this route. If you're an independent artist and you don't want to go through a label and no aggregators, we all can count them in one hand. You got to go through these DIY platforms. They're amazing. They opened a lot of opportunity for a lot of people. They helped a lot of independent artists. They helped building a lot of small distributors to big distributors became, to small labels to became big label because of their accessibility and the setup. Amazing. Love the aggregators. Love the current setup that's been around for years and many years. Now, is that going to be the way? It has to be other ways. How can we, do you see in the near future, or not far, I would say in the near future, the distribution, way of distributing music for independent artists that, as you said earlier, to maintain and to have control of their income. Like, I'm not, why would I have to share it with this and that and this and that? My 100% becomes 50% because all of the cuts that's being taken off of it, all the percentages, all the fees, unnecessary upload fee, administration fee, transfer fee, all of that. It's enough that the platform itself it takes a certain percentage.
Here is that middlemen, have definitely a value, right? There's a lot of value in having to place your MP3 and your artwork into one spot to get distributed to 150 different sources, as opposed to going to each single one of them and getting an account. And I would just implore the creatives to generally think through the services that they're utilizing and trying to see if there's something that is quicker, something that is cheaper, right? Something that is more efficient. And depending on what stage of your career you're at, you're going to have different opportunities and different kind of options in front of you. Somebody who's just starting out just has the DistroKid CD Baby TuneCore approach in front of them, right? Somebody who has distributors who have their in-house distribution and in-house relationships with the platforms and in-house relationships with playlists,
Yeah,
they would be able to provide us more substantial value, but they would be also charging you a premium on it. So at the end of the day, just it comes back to, is the juice worth the squeeze, pretty much, right? If the value that you are getting from your distributor is enough for you to be in all the major platforms and get all the listeners in the world, then that is very good. That would also say that between those distributors, there's also some that charge a little percentage on it, some that just charge a per work fee. So
yeah.
depending on how big you are, your percentages might be less than that fee if you're just starting out. But if you have grown, then it might make sense to do a switch over and go to one of the fixed fee platforms as opposed to percentage ones. And then
Correct.
if you work through the kind of the distributor landscape outside of the aggregators and the digital service providers, the same things apply. How many times have I had to remove an admin fee that wasn't anything other than just an extra on top of what somebody is charging my client or trying to charge my client, just because, well, that's how we have been doing. And then the moment I'm negotiating this deal with the same distributor on behalf of another client, the admin fee changes. So all of those things, the reserve clauses, oh, we need the 35% to hold on to 35% of your revenues in case the CDs break. What CDs? What are we doing here? So there's a lot of that language and those additional attempts that grab a portion of what we're doing. So every single deal that you're executing, whether it's with a digital aggregator or an actual distributor, it needs to make sense, and they need to provide you with a logical explanation what it is that they're doing for you that's so great that costs 10%, you know?
But in your opinion, do you think that's going to change soon? That's going to disappear? Like, there's an era for everything in life. And, I've been in the music business for a long time. I've seen different eras and things just gone, no longer exist. Certain practices, certain ways of doing things. So do you think that's also going to change in the near future, maybe 5 years from now? You no longer have to do this. This become passe. You would have to. There's more control of artists to be really more even independent. I do see. I interview a lot of people, and I do see it right now. More and more artists want to be independent. There's companies even just give you advances based on your earned royalties, your following on social media, your previous success and digital streamings, that you've done. And so obviously things are changing rapidly. It took a while, but now it's moving rapidly. So what's the future of distribution? Is it going to be the same? Nothing stays the same. Obviously, technology is the leading vehicle in for the music business. You know,
Very much so. I think it is technology dependent first and foremost, because if there is a path forward where you can go, well, let's say, imagine this, right? We have different platforms, we have different aggregators. Let's say there's one now that has been able to establish deals and the relationships with all of them, that every single platform that you know that distributes your music now wants to obtain access to this new platform, right? And this new platform allows users to just distribute all the music at a click of a button immediately to people's ears, right? If that is part of the equation, obviously that cuts into a lot of the digital distributors' businesses because it is
sure.
more convenient, right? Because you don't need to be going through the different dashboards and trying to see, oh, why is it so that my royalties are, monthlies, not quarterlies or yearlies, and I can only get them in a 100 gigabyte Excel spreadsheet, right? Can I get this a little bit more convenient? So it all depends on the level of convenience that we provide our users and the distributors, so I guess the platforms, the streaming platforms, on the other end. If there is a more convenient technology, it's going to overtake anything that exists currently. If that technology is going to come from somebody that's already in the market and working on it, well, now they're going to have a better niche because they're offering that convenience. It's all about serving the convenience and the comfort of the user at the end of the day.
Hmm. But definitely there will be changes. I'm not aware of it yet, but I know there will be. And I think the gaming industry, the video gaming industry, is the leader of how content. I think content going to be consumed in the future. I think the way we distribute is the way we're going to consume content. You know,
I I do think that when it comes to audiovisual works, right, and generally audiovisual content, there has been already a substantial shift, right? Nobody is
please.
going to a movie theater, right? Or definitely people go to
Correct.
the movie
Correct.
theaters, but it's not necessarily a weekly endeavor for you, right? It might be something that you do once a year because a great movie is coming out and it's a great weekend to do so. But then you go to YouTube and Twitch and Kick, and this is where you get the majority of your content kind of on a day to day basis that allows you to be more closely connected to the folks who are providing you that content, that allows you to follow their lives and all of that and kind of feel a little bit more involved. And then also our attention spans that have significantly lowered from back in the day require that constant feed of content and constant access, constant updates. So I think their audiovisual definitely is already experiencing a significant change. Just depends on how the audio is going to catch up to it. But we do have a lot of work in the streaming space. I have a number of clients who are streamers, some Russians, some locals, that we negotiate different endorsements and sponsorship deals for. And that's
Mhm.
it's an interesting thing to be able to kind of join your client's stream and see that there's 20,000 people watching it simultaneously, which would be about the same amount of people that goes to a Miami Heat game. And that kind of doesn't necessarily always register how much of that influence or how much of that access some of the folks with successful streaming careers have over our minds and our audiences.
Let's talk about your, I would say, some of your lessons or some of your experiences that you that you come across. I know you work with a lot of startups in Miami, Florida, and what's some of the common challenges or issues that some of these entrepreneurs kind of struggle with when they come to you with their music startups or other tech, not necessarily could be in the music, just in general. I know the Soundbreaker, we all talk, this is all about music business, music tech we talk about, but kind of because it's all coming together, as I said, technology is the leading vehicle into what we do in the music business.
I think the most difficult challenge, throughout states and say with some nations as well, is finding competent people. Oftentimes, what you see with startups is that with while their lack, they probably usually have a certain
Mm,
expertise in a niche field that they're trying to solve a problem for, right? You very rarely see people starting startups to solve problems that they themselves are not familiar with, right? And if they do that, they're probably not going to be successful. The majority of the startups that do have success come from that very same industry that you're trying to solve. Oh, you worked with hospitality businesses and you've seen this gap that this software allows to fill in, and now communication is that much more smoother and everybody's revenues go skyrocket. Well, you're probably going to have some level of success because you're basing your solution on the existing problem that you yourself were facing for 10 years, right? So same thing with that. There's usually a certain amount of expertise, but now the question is, how do you build the core team around that? Because you need to
mhm.
have professionals in technology, you need to have professionals in finances, you need to have legal support, you also need to have business development, you need to have marketing, right? There's definitely a lot of value that is being I think undervalued in the operational support, having COOs who know how to everything needs to work and making sure that those beautiful ideas that CEOs conjure up actually turn into executions that 15 people down the chain need to do a specific thing on. So all of that kind of comes into play with the startups that I've seen do great things and the exits and raise funds and grow and scale, is that you need to build a team that is experienced and is very much so a niche specialist in each one of those fields, because you can't wear all those hats. And unfortunately, the
Correct.
startups where founders do wear all those hats and try to be the COO and the CEO, and maybe they have a technical competency, so they also try to put on a CTO hat from time to time.
But what if they don't have the money to hire people? They don't. The finances are not there. They say I'm bootstrapping it.
Well, that is an unfortunate reality of launching a
Yes,
startup. This is where you go to
correct.
friends and family and get your first pre-seed money, right? This is where you go to banks and get loans. Hopefully not, but you go to investors who are passionate about your industry. Once again, if you're in healthcare, don't go to athletics professionals and try to so make sure that you find your mark, right? If you're an insurance startup, go to people who know insurance and invest in insurance to find the funding. And oftentimes, the first 6 months, maybe a year of the startup is going to be a lot of ebbs and flows. It's not necessarily always, the graph doesn't always just stream up. Like, right, that you're trying, and now you've made it. It's never that. It's always an ebb of flow of, oh, am I going to make it? I'm going to have enough money. Oh, I've raised some money. I'm in a great spot. Oh, now I've had an issue come up with my technology and we need to redo our whole stack. That's going to take us 5 months and we're onboarding people for beta. Oh, how will we be able to do it? Oh, we've solved the problem, but now we have a new one. And you're always in that kind of very much so stress intense environment. And this is where having good people around you that oftentimes are not paid right until you raise that funding or until you're able to pay salaries. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of couch psychology that needs to happen. There's a lot of you need to get involved oftentimes as the founder of a project in your co-founders' lives to make sure that they're good, to make sure that they're not worried about things, to make sure that they have the same kind of eye on the prize as you do when the big dollars haven't started hitting the bank account. And that's
Hmm.
usually where the majority of startups kind of fall apart, is that they haven't gotten to that point where they're able to pay folks, right? Or they've gotten to it once and then the money got spent on something as well, before they actually start losing people because somebody got a new job or somebody got a new project. It's a process. It's a process.
A lot of these startups and a lot of people in the music business always don't look at that side of the business, which is really having a lawyer, having an attorney, understand the laws, having proper contracts. And that's always been pushed. And the only time it arises when there's a problem. Oh, I really don't have a lawyer. No, I don't have an entertainment lawyer. Do you know anybody? And or no, I don't have the right contract or something I downloaded from online. I came across it in Google, or And you see these cases, a lot of those cases. Yes, we do say yes. I mean, good attorneys, good knowledgeable attorneys, they're not going to be cheap. They're going to be between $300 to $500 an hour, or 250 to 500. Let's say, let's keep it average to.
Mhm.
And somebody said, "Oh, I cannot pay that. That's like, every time I got to speak to them, it's going to cost me $500-600. I don't make that type of money." But it's so important when you start, like, you see the difference. Like, as an attorney, just I want you to emphasize and say how important it is for anybody, whether you're an artist or you are a music, how should I say, want to be a music executive in your own label or a music tech startup. How important to you to have your legal knowledge and your legal ammunition always by your side in case something happened, in case you need it.
Well, I would say I've personally got to develop my practice in a way where I don't charge people that want to talk to me. I don't charge for consultations. I just want to make sure that I'm able to help somebody out. And if I have that information in my head, I'll be happy to share it. Additionally, all these kind of engagements and things for me to be able to reach different communities and speak on the topics, they also help out educating those communities, right? I don't necessarily expect musicians to be as well versed in the law of music
No.
as I'm not expecting myself, and don't have the hubris of saying that, oh well, I know the music business so well. I'm not there looking at streams, right? I'm not there in Spotify for artists. I'm not there looking at my dashboards and DistroKid, right? I do that ad hoc, obviously, for different transactions, but this is not what I spend the majority of my time on. I spend time on making sure that the legal paperwork and the legal registrations and everything around it is solid and proper. So, with that same approach, I'm not expecting my clients to know things by heart, but I want to be able to educate them and make sure that some flags or some light bulbs, blow up for them
Yeah.
and say that, oh, you probably need to talk to a lawyer at this point. You're about to enter into a transaction. And when I prepare documents for clients, I always want to make sure that I provide them with instructions, right? We've prepared a package of documents for you, right? Here's your LLC, here's your documents internally with your partners, here's your producer agreements, here's your collaboration agreements, here's your template for whenever you want to, do a music video, and here's a set of documents for it. Now, you should have an understanding of where each one of those things is applicable. And if you have a question about it, feel free to reach out, and then I'll just tell you, oh, well, you should use this document, right? And make sure that this one is the one that you offer them. But if they say no, then you give them that option that is a little bit less favorable to you. But that it always has to be an open dialogue between attorneys and their clients, because attorneys don't know the actual business, as well as they're not there in the trenches, they're not there in the studios, in the booth. So there is a certain level of, I, as an attorney, can say, well, you should have signed that songwriter split right there and then when you were in the studio, right? That's the smart thing to do. But then also, I wasn't in the studio. I didn't know what was happening there. I didn't know whether there was a party environment and everybody was just having fun, right? And it would
Mhm.
not be proper to bring paperwork to the equation. So you gotta have that flexibility. And my job is just to educate folks on the times when they need to do the things that will be good for them. And if they haven't had a chance to do so for whatever reason, then it's my job to fix it, right? And clear
Mhm.
those works and find those collaborators and get their signatures and make sure that whatever transactions that my clients are executing are, going through all the proper due diligence from the counterparty. So sometimes it's going to be a lot of going back, and that will be more expensive than doing everything properly from the beginning. 100%. And in some instances, you're going to face situations where you have some uncleared works, uncleared samples in your music, and you're trying to negotiate a deal, and that question arises, and you're trying to reach out to the collaborator, and they've
Which is
never
very common. Very common.
every single transaction, yes.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, that happened 2 years ago, and everybody was high, and nobody remembers. So that's also sometimes part of the equation. So yes, do everything in the booth, or at the very least, kind of have those things be ready for yourself.
Mhm.
And you don't need to hire an attorney every time you want to sign a songwriter split. Just get a proper songwriter split and put your name and the collaborator name in it and the percentages. That's it. So it's a combination of making sure that you provide the instruments to your clients in addition to just doing the legal work.
I like what you mentioned, that you pretty much try to come up with a package deal for a lot of these startups or record companies, startups. that, hey, I'm going to give you the package that give you all the things, all the ammunition, all the things you really need, so you don't have to call me every day. Here's your contract with your producers, here's your collaboration, here's your work for hire, here's your licensing agreement, here's all of these things that you will need on more of a, if not daily, on a weekly basis. Oh, I got another producer, I need to sign this artist, I have this, I have that, which is very important. So this way, and obviously they can in a way customize it, whether it's the term could be changed, the name, obviously, and all that, the term, or you keep this, I keep that, the percentages could be adjustable based on the deal they make. But at least the whole structure is there for the agreement and the whole setup. Let's talk about IP. IP is a really an important thing that a lot of people overlook it, which is intellectual properties. How to play a big thing right now, especially in the music tech industry that we're getting into right now, is becoming a big thing. No more. No, you no longer hear people saying the music business is only the music tech, and tech became part of that music, part of our music world, even in the way we label it. And IP plays a big part of it. I would love to hear some of your challenging IP cases that you came across. But first, let's talk about IP and how important, what does it represent, and how a lot of these entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, protect their IP, and what does IP mean to them and to their investors?
I would say that IP represents a very substantial asset that a lot of the businesses that are involved in any content creation or technology, it's very prevalent because the code that is being put, that the app runs on, right, or website app or whatever the tool is runs on, that is subject to copyright.
Yeah,
Any brands, logos, etc., that's subject to trademarks. You want to make sure that you have proper protections for both. If you're
yeah,
in a creative business, anytime you collaborate with somebody, they're considered to be the co-author of what you put together. If you hire a sound
correct.
engineer and don't have a work for hire with them, they're going to be a part owner of your sound recording. And all those things that come in play, most in not necessarily in the kind of in the weeds of when things are being created or developed on the tech side. They come into play when you're trying to monetize, when you're trying to sell something, when you're talking to investors, when you're talking to record labels. And I'm kind of mixing the two scenarios here: the tech startups and the music, entrepreneurs, creatives. But it's the same approach. The more IP you're able to retain by the time you get to the negotiating table, and whether that's a negotiating table with somebody who wants to do a merger and acquisition with your startup and give you $10 million, or whether that's somebody who wants to buy your catalog for $10 million, it doesn't really matter. It's just a question of how much IP have you retained, and that can be reflected either by registrations, with the corporate
Hmm.
offices. That can be retained by contracts, by you signing those agreements, making sure that you have either ownership or exclusive administration over your works, even if they are co-authored or co-owned with somebody else. So at the end of the day, what is being bought in the majority of any tech creative transactions is that IP that brings the revenue. Obviously, there's going to be some elements in a lot of different businesses where IP is not that prevalent, right? If you're selling equipment, there definitely will be some things associated with the design and the branding. Once again, trademarks, etc. Maybe some patents come into play. But if you don't have any physical assets you're selling, all you're selling at the end of the day is IP, whether it be an IP that you show your users through their browsers that they get access to and that you need to provide them a license to be able to use in your terms and conditions for your SaaS platform, or whether it be your music video that somebody's watching on YouTube, where YouTube collects some royalties, or rather your distributor collects them from YouTube, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, the more IP you have in association with anything that you're trying to sell somebody, or somebody's trying to buy from you, the better the deal is going to be. So make sure
Interesting.
to collect as much out of it. Catch them all, as Pokemon lingo would have it.
What's some of the? Can you share some cases, some tough or interesting IP cases that you worked with and you had to represent?
Well, a number of different executions, right? It's having worked at a content brand, we've negotiated deals with a large number of media companies, holdings, TV channels, Netflixes of the world. Mushin the Bear is on Netflix and has been for quite some time. Then, as part of my law practice here in the states, IP is everything that we deal with on a daily basis, right? Whether it be a scenario of trying to clear a musician's catalog because he has had over 100 different songs over the years, and half of the producers are not responding now because he used somebody's beat off of YouTube, and then no paperwork was ever put in place. Or whether we're talking about a startup context where somebody's trying to execute an acquisition transaction to purchase somebody's user base, right? That startup was successful, and now a new one is popping up, and they want to get access to all of those hundreds of thousands of users that the previous one had. All of those things, one way, shape, or form, are going to be associated with IP. And there's a certain flow and a certain chain of title that applies to any of those. It's a question of who originated the IP and where has the IP gone afterwards. Whether where has it been assigned to, where has it been licensed to, and in any type of scenario, you kind of need to go back and see, oh, well, do you actually have all the rights? Have you signed all the paperwork? Has everybody signed all those work for hire agreements? The specific cases, there's a variety of those. I would just generally say that no matter the context, we've had our chance to defend people in litigation. We've had a chance to pursue some infringement on behalf of our clients when it comes to IP as well. And then a lot of the context of the type of work we do is all transactional. So it's all about signing endorsement deals, right? Sponsorship deals. There's
Correct.
relations and brand relations, and all of those include some format of IP, because there's obviously the federal regulated IPs, the copyrights and the trademarks, who has the right to use whose brand, etc. But then there's
Yes.
also name, image, and likeness that comes in, that much more prevalent when you talk about entertainment. Oh, can I use your photo in relation to this brand, right? Can I use can I have you be the endorser and representative, and can I have that association between my brand and your persona? So any type of documents, agreements need to establish that chain of title and transfer or license of those rights, so that if somebody is using IP that they haven't created, they need to get a permission to be able to do so. So
Got it. What do you think? What trends will shape the entertainment law and IP law for the coming years, you would think?
I am interested in what some of the new AI tools that are coming on to the
A
public's
lot.
mindset. Yeah, a lot of
A
them.
lot.
I am interested in what those will bring. I've heard a couple of very interesting, tech savvy projects when it comes to the separation between individual elements of the songs, being able to track individual stamps, being able to track individual melody notes. All those, I think, have a chance to make great effect, because kind of the more the technology can pick up from a song, the more it can be monetized, the more can be licensed. And now it's
Hmm.
just a question about how convenient do you make it for the users. If there's a tool that allows me to load my song in, and then some ad wants to use a little jingle out of it, right? And I'm getting a sync license in my
Go
bank
ahead.
account, let's do it, right? I think that's one of those use cases where AI can help with that delivery and that processing, and some of that separation of assets to be able to monetize each single one of them independently. And that's just one of the few kind of things that could
Yeah.
potentially be brought with the advance of AI. But at the end of the day, music is pretty much so rooted in a lot of tradition, right? The law is also similarly rooted in a lot of tradition. It takes a long time to change something. So there will always be that conflict, that dichotomy between something that a lot of artists ask us is like, oh, can you use AI to create your works? I'm like, you can do that and you can monetize, but the moment you are out there trying to license it or trying to get some sell it or get some value as a result of some transfer transaction in regards to your work, well, if there's a due diligence team on the other end, there's going to be a question as to, well, you don't own half of this because that's been created by AI, so we're not going to give you any money for it. So it's a thing that can be used as of right now and can definitely serve as inspiration for a lot of artists. And then also some of the tools can help them get their content across to people.
Hmm.
But you have to be, not worried, but cognizant of you limiting your own ability to profit down the road if you use too much AI in your works. It's the same thing that code developers have been dealing with for years and years with open source software. You can take open source software and put it in your program. It's going to be running better than it would have been
Yes,
without it. But if you don't develop that portion independently, you won't be able to sell this as an asset somebody down the road. Or I guess maybe your options in regards to who you can sell it to are going to be more limited. So
absolutely. I mean, when it comes to generative music AI, it's not regulated. There's no regulation against it. Yes, we heard about the big lawsuits happened recently, and in your opinion, is it right, or is it because people say, hey, how do we learn as a human? By listening to other people's music. I worked in a studio, let's say. I never did, but I'm just saying, I work in a studio and I was influenced by a lot of the rock bands we used to record, or a lot of hip hop, or whatever music I'm influenced to and I'm listening to, I'm learning, I'm going to produce. So it's similar to, wouldn't you say it's similar to machine learning? The machine, whatever you expose it to, you expose that machine learning technology you develop to jazz, it's going to come up. It's not going to produce the same, but it's going to be influenced by all these sounds, all thousands of songs that you let the machine learning practice on or learn. That's what the machine learning going to come up with. Same
yeah,
thing. So, I mean, it's just much faster. That's all. It took me 10 years, let's say, to learn to become a great jazz musician or jazz producer by being influenced, by listening and working with a lot of producers. So that's how I. What do you think to that? Like, what's your.
look at the general take on creatives using generative AI. Is that kind of the root of the issue? I think you're definitely should get the benefit of that everybody else is getting if it actually gives you some value. I wouldn't necessarily say that. My personal take on it is on all AI generally is you won't be substituted by AI. You're going to be substituted by the person who spent time learning it, right? If you have a similar skill set with somebody, but somebody can do some tasks or some
Yeah,
processes 10 times faster than you can, he's gonna or she's gonna have an inherent advantage. So the idea is, but then at the same time, if you are not an expert in that field and you're just purely relying on AI to create something for you, it's gonna lack depth, right? If you ask Chat GPT to write a detailed contract for you, it's going to give you the basics, right? But then
yes,
every time I see a Chat GPT drafted contract, I know that that is a Chat GPT drafted contract because, well,
yes.
it's bad.
You can
So
catch it right away.
yeah, so the idea is if, and it's the same thing with everything. I have coder friends who say that oh, we do algorithmic trading and sometimes we use AI to make sure that our models are more refined, but the only way for us to do it is I've already done that 50 times, so I know exactly how to do it. So now I can use AI to make some portions of my job faster. But if you think
Got
you
it.
can go to ChatGPT and say, well, can you just make an algorithm that's going to make me money? It's not going to give you a lot of good stuff. And same thing with creative. It's like if you guide it properly, if you prompt it properly, then you have a chance to make something beautiful. But on the other hand, the copyright office have been pretty stingent with their determination of who can be an author. And based on the previous case about a monkey taking a picture of somebody, it's only humans that can be an author from the perspective of a copyright office. So
Got it.
feel free to use it, but it's going to have some limitations that are rooted in law when you do.
Um, Great interview. Love it. Extremely insightful, Alex. Before we say goodbye to you and thank you, quick advice from somebody who works and deals with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of musicians, and a lot of music tech startups. Any advice for these upcoming entrepreneurs to get involved into that path, entertainment music path?
I would say it takes a team and make sure you have a good one around you. Not a lot of projects are just, one person doing something out of their bedroom. You need to make sure that you have competent support around you. You need to trust experts, which is not necessarily always easy when you are your own business. But at the end of the day, if you want to be scaling your business, if you want to be growing your business, you need to learn how to delegate. And I think that's one of those lessons that we all learn as we're going through the growing pains of whatever business we're in. So surround yourself with good people. That'll just be one of those advices.
Alex, if somebody want to get a hold of you, they watch this episode, they love it. They say, you know what, Alex has the right knowledge. I'm in Miami or I'm in New York, and he's licensed in both. I want to get a hold of Alex to help me out, to create the contracts for me, whatever they need. Well, how do you get a hold of you?
We can be found at Chase Lawyers. Chase is a bank, lawyers in plural. That's the name of our senior partner, Mr. Barry Chase. We can be found on socials, Instagrams, Facebooks, LinkedIn's, I think TikTok we also have. And feel free to email me at alex@Chase Lawyers if you have any poignant, specific questions. Happy to help.
Anything we should be on the lookout for that's coming soon by Alex or by Chase, the entertainment law firm in Miami?
I would say I have about 4 or 5 different speaking engagements in the next couple of months. I'm going to Brooklyn for Brooklyn Tech Week to speak about AI and blockchain. I'm doing a presentation for a music and tech conference here in Miami. I think talking about some of the AI implementation to the hospitality space and entertainment, hosting a couple of webinars on crypto and setting up proper legal entities. So feel free to follow the socials and I'll share everything with you.
Amazing. Alex, really thank you very much for joining us today. And this concludes our episode of Soundbreaker. It's been exciting, extremely insightful, Alex. I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners at Soundbreaker will find it extremely beneficial and helpful. And if they need more, obviously they're going to get a hold of you. Please make sure to follow us on socials and stay tuned for our next episode. Alex, again, thank you for your time, sir. I appreciate it. And see you soon.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the Soundbreaker podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.